Another week, another episode of Dear Rach and Soph. I'm Sophie Green.
And I'm Rachael Johns. Hello.
Hello, listeners slash viewers. And yet again, every time I say the word viewers, I feel like Paul Hogan. G'day, viewers. How are you, Rachel?
You're much better dressed than Paul Hogan.
Look, back in the day, you could not beat the King G short long sock combo. So I don't know about that.
Anyway, we won't spend the time debating that. I'm okay. I've been just madly writing again. Everyone must be sick of me just saying that that's all I do. I'm just like a broken record. What are you up to? Writing. Hey, you busy? Yes. But I did have some good news. Oh, well, this week I went with my friend Anthea Hodson, who's also a writer, which I do another podcast with. We went to Albany, which for anyone who doesn't know WA, I'm in Perth and Albany is like a 5-hour drive south. And we did a day trip to Albany, well, not a day trip, 2-day trip to Albany because we only stayed one night because I did an event at Paperback's Bookshops Book Club, which is a really great bookshop in Albany. So if you're ever holidaying down there, you must check it out. And so that was fun, but it did take 2 days out of my writing. And I'm off to New Zealand this weekend with my mum, sort of a celebration of her 80th birthday and also to see family over there. So I was hoping to finish my book by then, but I have not. For me, this is probably the longest book I've ever written, I think. Not the longest as in length, but time-wise. But I sent it to my publisher to see what she thought and just to get her, to see if she thought we could still meet the deadline, basically. And so she called me yesterday afternoon on my way back from Albany and she was full of praise, reckons it's the best thing I've ever written, is blown away, and was worried that she's not going to be able to do as much, she won't be a good editor because she keeps getting lost in the story. So, phew. I'm feeling good about that, but I still have to finish, so it would be better if I had finished. And she said that. But yeah, it's still a nice feeling, right, Soph?
It's a lovely feeling, and given how many events you've had going on and other things, it's just the nature of writing these days, and not unrelated to something we may discuss at a future episode, which is the nature of promotion of books. And
actually,
it's also
it's also a bloody miracle, excuse my French, because yes, I started this book in October, and in October, the end of October, I had Outback Reunion, I think. Out and then we had Christmas and New Year and people being on school holidays and around and then I had The Bad Bridesmaid out at the end of January. I went on tour for 3 weeks, so I may have mentioned before, and I know I've said this to my publisher, I love this book so much, like it is getting up there possibly as one of the favorite things I've written too,
right?
But I feel like I've never given it full attention, like it's never had my whole focus because the whole time I've pretty much been in promotion mode for one book or another. And only this last few weeks that's kind of eased off, but I've still done an event and I've done a few events this month. So yeah, if it is the best book I've ever written, it's probably a miracle.
Well, a miracle, or also just that maybe you've just become more adept at writing in and around all those other demands on your time. You are now an expert. You have so
It's
many.
funny because I didn't think that I was very good at, in a lot of ways, I feel like I've stopped being good at being able to write in, the little corners in life. Like when I had little kids, I wrote a bit like you in terms of when I had to spare half an hour here or, instead of your commute, I wrote in their quiet time. And in some ways, I feel like I've lost the ability to write on planes, write in snatches and stuff. So yeah, I guess it's just a different way and things move as life changes
But if Ellie's saying it's the best thing, she thinks it's the best thing you've written, then something's going right.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
And that's why I think I've said probably a lot over the last few months when we've been talking and stuff. Like sometimes I'm very much about following my gut, and I know deadlines are important, right? You're a publisher, so you as well as an author, so you know that too. But I've really intuitively listened to, that sounds weird, into the story of this. And sometimes I'm like, I'm not ready to write the next scene yet because I haven't kind of worked out exactly. And so I've faffed around that day and written notes. And then the next day, boom, it's really come to me. So I'm very much leading into the going with the feeling and don't forcing myself to write if I'm not feeling it, which is weird because I would always have said, I often used to quote this guy, and it's true to an extent. Like I do still sit down at the desk every day and try and, you know, achieve something.
Hmm.
But because I remember used to quote this guy I heard once, I can't remember who it was, at an event, say, someone asked him, do you wait for the muse to arrive or do you just, write anyway? And he goes, every day I sit down at the computer and I wait for my muse to arrive. And when she doesn't, I start anyway. And while that is true, I really am leaning into a little bit more just that time to think being important to me. And I'm not saying that works for everyone, right? Like, because but at the moment it's working for me. So I think you should really lean into what is working for you. Anyway, Sophie, enough about me. What's going on?
Absolutely. Well, at the time we're recording, which is the only time we can speak about, I have just revealed the cover of my new novel.
It looks so good. I love
Lessons
it.
in
I
Love
love
at
the
the Seaside
color.
Salon is the name of the book, title of the book rather. And so
Sorry, I think I may have talked over you. So do you want to say the title again?
it is Lessons in Love at the Seaside Salon.
Such great alliteration.
Well, it was originally Monday mornings at the Summertime Salon. I just paused there because I thought, did I actually say the old name of the salon?
No, you
it
didn't.
used to be Monday mornings at the Summertime Salon. I put a video on social media in which I said we realized the title was not quite working anymore because I basically locked myself into a structure with the Monday mornings thing that I realized once I was writing was not appropriate and in fact was far too limiting for what I wanted to do. So that needed to go, but I do love alliteration. So
So do I.
had Lessons in Love or Love Lessons, and then a reader called Jenny Kessel came up with the seaside bit. She just put it in a comment on Facebook rather, and then also in one of the episodes of Dear Rach Soph on YouTube.
I was going to say, she's definitely a listener too. So hi, Jenny.
Yeah, tell her, Jenny. And so Jenny suggested Love Lessons at the Seaside Salon, and then I just went further and made Lessons in Love at the Seaside Salon. And as soon as I saw the seaside bit, I just thought, yeah, that's right. So thank you very much, Jenny.
I love it.
For changing my view on that, because it hadn't occurred to me to change the name of the salon until then, but I think Seaside works really well. And I've also this week been to the ARIA Innovator Conference. So in my country music life, I was invited to go to this conference run by ARIA, the Australian Recording Industry Association. It was fascinating. There was Panos Panay, who runs the Grammys, so the head of the Recording Academy in the States. There was a professor of marketing called Marcus Collins from the University of Michigan, who was amazing. I took so many notes. And then there was also Dr. Nikki Sweeney on ethical AI. And there was Gabby Lopez, who is the VP of marketing from Universal Music. And she was talking about marketing of artists. And it was a lot about fan culture. It was really, really interesting. So I'm thinking about a lot of that in relation to books as both a public.
I was going to say, it would have been, there's a lot of kind of crossover indirectly.
Yeah. So I found that really interesting and just letting it marinate for a while, but was really pleased to have been asked. And yeah, because I straddle those worlds of music and books, I'm often thinking about the things that are in common, the things where music is way out ahead. So music started evolving a long time before we did. They were forced into it really by Napster, if anyone remembers Napster. And so that was the dawn of streaming, really. That was file sharing, but it was the dawn of what became streaming. So music's been way out ahead of books. There are a lot of things that they're thinking about now and doing now that would serve the publishing industry well to pay attention to and implement.
Can you give us, I mean, I know we haven't got long, but a couple of things? Like what do you mean?
Well, they have recognized that that traditional avenues of promotion in media are gone. They don't even really think about them anymore in terms of
you mean like newspapers, magazines,
television, radio, gone. Like they don't think that they're any kind of way to promote an artist. It's social media is it, and what they focus on is super fans. Okay, so the super fan, they say you need to appeal to the super fan, and if you can crack that, they'll do the work for you.
Yeah,
because of telling other people.
There's a couple of books about that too. One of them specifically to do with the author world. I haven't read them, but yeah, I've heard that term a lot. Yeah.
So anyway, it's very interesting. But we do have a guest coming in, and she's in the waiting room. And so I'm going to. I think the new mode is I'm going to read the bio before the guest comes in, rather than subjecting them to me reading a bio.
Yes, that worked well.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it.
Our subject for today, that this guest chose, because we've had it on our list for a while, Rachel, and it is Perfectionism and Procrastination. They are bedfellows. So
and alliteration.
And alliteration, there we go. So we offered some subjects to Dinuka McKenzie, who is our guest, and she chose this one to talk about. We'll talk about some other things as well. But Dinuka is the author of the Detective Kate Miles crime series, the books The Torrent, Taken, and Tipping Point, published in Australia and the United Kingdom. She is the winner of the 2020 HarperCollins Australia Banjo Prize. Her writing has been shortlisted for the Sisters in Crime Davitt Awards, the Bad Sydney Crime Danger Awards, and longlisted for the Richell Prize. Her short fiction has appeared in the 2022 Dark Deeds Down Under crime and thriller anthology. So she is a well-credentialed crime writer, and I'm going to put us on hold and welcome her in. Here we go. Rachel, I am so pleased to be talking to Dinuka McKenzie. Hello, Dinuka.
Hello, it's so lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so glad you're here too, because I feel like I've followed you a long time on socials and so commented and stuff there. So this doesn't feel like a first-person meeting, but it is a first-person meeting.
Exactly. And I don't think we've ever met in person, which is so, weird. Like when you follow someone for so long on socials, and then you genuinely feel like you know them, and then you're like, actually, I don't think we've actually met in real life.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's lovely to actually have you on.
Yes. Thank you. No,
it's because Rachel has like the celebrity energy thing going on. Right. So everyone's got this parasocial relationship. They feel that they know her.
My goodness.
Sure that she goes to writers' festivals and people are like, oh, hi, Rach. Like,
exactly. So exactly. I love that. So I love
that. But you are our celebrity today.
Oh, okay. All right.
And you have your books behind you, and they feature the character Kate Miles. Now, she was in your Banjo Prize winning manuscript Flood Debris. So I'm curious about when she first came to you.
Yes. Well, she first came to me. So basically my writing, I guess, started when I had my kids. So I'm not one of these people who've been kind of always imagined themselves to be a writer or anything. And actually, I'm quite fascinated by people who always knew that, because I
didn't either.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, for me, it just never was in the cards. It didn't occur to me to think of the person behind the book. Like, I was a huge reader, but it literally never occurred to me to think of the lives of an author, like who they were, what they did. Anyway, so that was never in the cards. So when I had my kids and I kind of entered that really overwhelming space, which, a lot of kind of new parents and new mothers do, where you kind of lose bits of yourself and you can feel bits of yourself kind of, kind of disappearing. And I was super overwhelmed, and I just kind of started writing as a means of, I guess processing that experience. And so I think that's where Kate came along, because I've always been a huge crime fiction reader. So that's always been like a comfort read for me. Actually, I don't know, I'll move my computer up a little bit so you can see all the Agatha Christie's right on top up there. Yeah. So like I've always done that. So then when I started writing, I was just kind of like pottering. What turned up on the page was this detective, but what she was doing was kind of processing my lived experience, or like the emotional truth of what I was going through. So what she was a kind of a mum, and she was managing this really kind of like demanding job, which she loved. She absolutely loved that. And she was ambitious for herself, and she'd worked very hard to get to the place that she'd got to. But she was, felt like she was kind of being pulled in two directions, So
relatable.
Exactly, right. And at that time, like I was, obviously my professional life was, I was a environmental consultant. So I had that life. And then I was, I had these kids, which were very much wanted, but also I still felt that these two bits of, like being pulled like one way or the other. And then and feeling like, when I was kind of with the kids, like my head was always in, I've got to think about that client meeting and the thing and the email and the whatever. And and then when I was over there, like you'd get the little notification on your phone going, they're still crying at preschool, whatever. And you're like, oh, okay, that's great. And so you always felt that kind of two sides of yourself. So then just Kate came along, and she was the way I think I kind of both escaped from my life and also process my life, if you know what I mean. And the escape was very much, okay, well, in this fictional life, I could literally control what the characters did and, kill who I wanted to.
Hey, I've got to say something about that.
Yes.
I was just going to say, when you said that, and Sophie's like, it's so funny because I was listening to you and I'm thinking, whenever I talk, when I do an event or whatever, often I start with how I got into writing too, obviously. And I always say I think there's two types of writers or authors. And I said, it's very broad and there's probably other ones, but I've really noticed it. It's those ones that they've wanted to write as long as, they can remember, and they've been able to hold a pen, or their mum or grandma or dad or something has read a story to them and they've just always been obsessed. They've always wanted to write. You've got a lot of those. And then you've got the rest of us, I feel, who come to writing through therapy. And it's not necessarily, somebody, it's not usually someone says, I think you should write your feelings down because that will help. It's something like I had similar to you. I'd never considered writing a book. I was only almost 18 when I did this, but I broke up with my high school sweetheart. I was absolutely devastated. And for some reason, I processed it through writing about it. And that made me fall in love with the book. And I have since met many people, and now I'm going to add you to the list. Kind of not necessarily a tragic, horrible thing, but something you just need to process. And I've met people whose, mum has died, or they've had a, near-death experience themselves, or they've had an illness or something like that. And it's sort of spurred them on either because of therapy or because then they've decided, well, what's important to me. So I really totally relate to that. So,
and I genuinely think it's sort of like a leeching of the poison, because I feel like so I've written these 3 books, which is very much like when it started, the Torrent, like Sophie, you mentioned Flood Debris, like that manuscript, which is such a terrible title. Anyway, we thankfully the publisher knew it. We're like, no, we're going to change that title.
What did we call it originally?
Flood Debris.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So we changed that title, so it became the Torrent. And so when
better.
yes. So Kate was pregnant in that book, and she's in her last week of maternity before last week of work before she goes on maternity leave. In the second book, she's a new mum, coming back to work in those, intense first few months of new motherhood, and like she's kind of breastfeeding in the office, and like all of those things that you're doing, and genuinely like. And sort of the third book is also about kind of that managing family and kind of her work life. And I feel like through those books, I processed that time of my life. And now I feel like, okay, I've done that. Like I've literally, like I've said everything I need to say about maternity and motherhood. Full stop. Like, no, you know what? Or that age of motherhood. Yeah, exactly. No, well, like, you know what I mean? Like that age of motherhood, like that intense period, which really, I felt like I had a lot of things to say, but like, I feel like now I don't think about it or I don't obsess over it because I've leached that poison and it's already been said, if you know what I mean. Like I've said what I wanted to say about it. So I don't, whereas other things which maybe I haven't processed through my books, I'm constantly obsessing over it.
Well, that's the next book. Right?
That's right, exactly.
Dinuka, I'm so interested in this idea of what you've done here, because I think also for anyone who's listening, what you've just said is that writing has been a way for you to come back to yourself and not journaling. So that's the other thing, is you could have actually just started journaling. You've actually not created an avatar in Kate, I guess, so much.
I like that.
Actually constructed a way, found a way to document your experiences, but still tell a story to other people. So that's a really deliberate, wonderful decision, I think, on your part to say, well, I'm actually going to take this experience and craft it in a way that I can deliver it to others, so that it might be entertainment, but it also might be meaningful. And also, I can't think of another detective character who's consistently going through those stages of maternity and motherhood in a series.
Well, and the most interesting thing was so when I started writing, it certainly wasn't for the purposes of getting published or anything like that. Like it was purely for my own personal, I needed that at that point, and that's what I ended up doing. But of course, then like you end up with sort of, 75, 80,000 words, and you're like, oh, well now maybe it can be a book, like, and then that parts of publication process began, which is, of course, a whole nother thing, you know, and that took its own kind of time. And, you know, I really needed to do a lot of work on my writing before we'd ever got to that stage. But so it never started off as that. And so it definitely wasn't, I guess, a deliberate decision on my part to go, okay, I'll just look at crime fiction and see what's missing. And what's missing is a detective who's pregnant. And, you know, like I never, you know, I didn't think of it that way, right? And it just turned out.
I think that's the best way when things happen that way.
Exactly. Yeah, so it just turned out that that's what I ended up writing, and that it just turned out that that ended up being like a fresh new thing for that genre.
Yeah.
And people, and then, but also, you know, that idea of that, you know, and you both talked about this before in the podcast about, you know, that little bit of luck, right? Because my manuscript met a publisher who was exactly at that stage in her life as well. You know, she was this, you know, she's a professional, absolutely, yeah. and you know, was a professional woman, like sort of with young children, and she absolutely got it. You know, like she got that experience, she got that emotional truth straight away. So it was the fact that my manuscript met her, and it was the person it needed to meet to champion that particular book and to get it, you know, with the whole heart. So so that's a bit of luck as well as, you know, kind of the writing part. Yeah.
So having won the manuscript prize, that was only in 2020. And I'm saying only in 2020 because you actually have had 3 books out. So bearing in mind the timelines for things, you won that in 2020. Clearly, like you would have got into production for the Torrent not long after. So going from writing to process your experiences to then finding yourself in a situation where there's 1 book and there's 2 and there's 3, as a writer, and especially as one who actually hadn't considered writing before that, did you quickly have to think, oh, how do I actually fit this in now as a regular practice because I have these deadlines that are coming up?
Yeah. So, okay. So it looks sort of quite impressive, okay, so for the reader, it was 2022, 2023, 2024. That was the publication dates. But for me, sort of that first manuscript was the really long manuscript. Obviously, I started in 2017, I think. So, you know, so that, you know, so, and then by the time it won the thing in 2020, in September 2020, and it only came out in February 2022. So there was quite a bit of a period there. And I used that entire period to write my whole second manuscript. So my whole second manuscript had actually already been submitted to HarperCollins, and they'd accepted it by that point. So when the Torrent was published, like the second manuscript had already been accepted by them as well. So it was like the third manuscript that I was kind of doing under pressure, if you know what I mean. And it was really I basically wrote Tipping Point with all of the things. So it was that was my third book, but it was definitely the second book syndrome, all of the feelings. The first time I had to do a book to deadline, the first time I had to do a book having published something and therefore with other people's opinions in my head, you know, whereas before I was obviously just, you know, just doing my own thing. And so that was quite, that was where I had all of the feelings and all of the stress and all of the kind of, you know, and I felt like because I was also doing the publicity for, you know, at that point taken to write, you know, whilst I was writing Tipping Point, and it was that, okay, so the Tipping Point was due in sort of like February or whatever, and I remember I pitched the idea of the third book, and then in like October, I think it was October, I had to call Anna and say, Anna, it's not working. I just chucked the entire manuscript. I have to start again. That whole thing of like this whole idea we've been working on at that stage, or I'd been working on, it just wasn't working. And so I basically wrote that whole thing, like the whole new, like, you know, the new version of the manuscript during that Christmas. Like it was this mad sort of like, I just got to write it. And I did submit it. I was kind of like, I think I got a 4-week extension, but I did submit it. It wasn't like ready. Like I still knew it needed a lot of work, but I think by that third manuscript, I had got to the stage where I could tell when it wasn't working, whereas I feel like before that I needed someone else to tell me when it wasn't working. Like I had got to the point where I could read it and go, I know it's not quite there, but it's also, here's the like, you know, like it's like like I haven't completely wasted my time. I've met the, you know what I'm trying to say? Like he's like, you know, good
Sophie
faith.
says that well.
Yes.
You say, Sophie, like when you've got the relationship with the publisher, you can, and they know what you can done before. Like you can submit a book that's how do you've said it before.
Oh, undercooked is what I might.
Yeah, I think you said like, you know, because
Undercooked.
they know what you can do. You also can say, look, I know this needs work, but like I'm ready. Kind of
Yeah, and I think
Yes.
it's also having that relationship and feeling confident in the relationship enough so that you exactly what you did with Anna and Dinuka, which is to say, you know, this isn't working, I've chucked it out. In fact, some people might have actually just not confessed that it wasn't working and they were going to chuck it out and just powered on through and hope for the best.
No, but like, you know, with actually the great thing with Anna is she, and I remember these words, and like we kind of talked about it quite recently. She said, I'm not after you meeting a deadline, I'm after a good book. And it just took that pressure off me because I felt like, okay, you know, she's got my back. Like it's not about just achieving a deadline for the sake of achieving a deadline. It's, you have to, you know, and I also felt like, you know, like again, and that's partly like I haven't been in that industry, like, you know, I hadn't grown up in that industry, like I was quite new to the industry, and I felt like what a huge kind of privilege of all these readers like really hooking on to Kate, you know, and so I felt like okay, well, there's these readers who like really engaged with Kate, and I wanted to honor that. Like I felt like I couldn't just deliver a manuscript purely because there was a readership there for her.
Yeah.
I wanted to deliver a manuscript that was, you know, like it was good enough to stand with the other two, like, or something like, you know, it was honoring those readers who were like looking forward to the next one or whatever. So and that was part of that. And like, I guess we're coming to that perfectionist sort of discussion, but that also played with my mind as well, kind of that expectation, which I don't think anyone was necessarily putting on me, but I wanted to be good enough for those readers, or I don't know, like, you know, meet that expectation. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. So I think I put that on myself as well. And that was just in the back of my mind while I was reading it, and just trying to make it better, because I knew it just wasn't quite there. But you know, like we got there, we did get there in the end, and I was incredibly proud of Tipping Point, because I know how incredibly hard I worked on it. Yeah, so to try and do it in that kind of compressed deadline time frame. So yeah, that was good.
Well, I think you've really neatly introduced the perfectionism subject, because, and also by saying it was something that you were putting on yourself, because I think that's the hardest one to dislodge, right? Because other people you can shut out literally. You can practice not listening to them. You can put your fingers in your ears and la your way through it. You can glide over an email and not take on what they're saying. But when you're alone with your own thoughts, particularly if you have a habit of judging yourself, and then with each book, I would imagine it can build, well, not I can imagine, because this is something that I'm speaking from experience as well, with other things. But, you know, it starts to accumulate. It's not like, oh, I've actually had those books out. Great. Well, I must know what I'm doing. I can take the pedal off a little bit. I do think it can get worse. And Rachel, you have over 20 books out. So I think this is a conversation we can all have about whether perfectionism actually gets worse the longer you go on writing. So Dinuka, please take us on your perfectionism journey.
Oh, yay. I mean, look, I think there's definitely like sort of like a personality side to it. And I am, you know, like I think I've always been that person where I'm quite self-critical and quite self-analytical, and, you know, I want to do the best that I possibly can. And I feel like, you know, at each stage, sort of, you know, and I think you're right, Sophie, like when you've noticed your skills get better, so therefore your kind of expectations for yourself and the expectations of where you want even your first draft to be is much higher than, you know, when you did your first draft back in the day, right? So which is a good thing, but also I think it has to be managed such that perfectionism doesn't lead to kind of paralysis, you know, so you can't kind of do anything because you're so sort of self-critical and so afraid of sort of doing anything wrong that you don't do anything at all. So, you know, and so it's a kind of a balance. I mean, I think the self-critical side is a good thing because it's incredibly, I think it's a good thing to be aware of like the level you're at with your craft and how much you have to learn still, and and not to just assume, well, I can just do it again, or like, I think there is that healthiness of, actually, I'm always a learner, and there's always more to learn, and there's always more to to learn from other people and other ways of doing things, and be open to feedback and all the rest of it. So I think there is that healthy component of that. But I also
calls it beginner mindset, do you?
Beginner mind, yeah.
But I also think that, and I have had spirals where it has affected my mental health really badly, where that has led to me becoming so anxious about this work, and just so anxious about it now going out into the world, because I just am unable to kind of get over the hump that it's okay, like it's allowed to exist, with whatever kind of mistakes or whatever limitations it still has. It is the best I could have done at that moment in time, based on the knowledge and information and my abilities at that moment in time. And I think it's just being kind to myself to go, that's fine. Like, that's okay, because that's all you could have done at that particular moment in time, and that's okay. And I, because I'm constantly kind of second guessing it, after a few months down the track, you're like, well, oh God, I missed that thing, I should have done that. You know what I mean? So I think, that's very much like a personality thing for me, and that's a broader issue of my personality that leads to all sorts of to my life in general, and the books are just part of that. And so I have to work on that. Like, I'm very aware of that as a kind of a personality things, and how it can manifest. And I'm particularly aware of it now that the kids are getting older, and they the kids are the best litmus test to your own neurosis. You're like, oh no, they're taking on, and you recognize, oh crap, they're taking on my thing. And now I'm like, now I really have to change, because you know what I mean? Because the only time you actually change it, when you realize you're becoming a bad role model for your kids, you're like, so I actually have to change it. So, and that's, and it's that mirror, and you're like, oh, so so that's like sort of a bigger issue that I've just been dealing with in general, of learning to be kinder to myself, learning to accept that, it's good enough, and also just to accept that, well, this is the only brain I have. I can't get the brain of X writer who I'm obsessed with. I wish I could, but I'm not. Like, this is the brain I have, so I can only be as good as I can. But hey, let's be grateful that I get to read X writer's work and be like, oh my God, I get to read their work. You know what I mean? Whereas, but I'll, just because I won't be able to write exactly how they write, it doesn't necessarily mean my work is any less worthy. No, but also, you know what I mean? Yeah, because I would rather,
I often think that, when you're reading something, or especially, I think often we compare our drafts to something amazing we're reading that has obviously been through the editing process, and, had multiple people give their feedback and rewrites and all that sort of stuff. And it's easy to say, I'll never be as good as Liane Moriarty, or, Marianne Keyes or whatever. But then I think in this day and age, and Sophie and I were talking about this a little bit before we did our intro, about the whole AI thing, right? You said, you'll never be so-and-so. And I know that's not exactly what you meant, but that's so important. You're you. And that's what we want.
Exactly.
We don't want you to be like somebody else, because we've already got their books.
Right? Exactly. And it's much better to be like the best version of you, rather than a lesser version of trying to imitate something, because you can never get their experiences, their kind of experiences of life and whatever. They are them because of their experiences, their knowledge, all of the things. And so I only have my kind of brain to play with and my experiences to play with. And so I just have to make the best of that. And it's just
reminding ourselves that constantly.
Exactly.
Talking yourself down off the edge and being kind. I love the word be kind. That's something that I've really focused on in the last few years, after almost burning out and going through a really tough patch. And So yeah, that's really important, I think, to be kind. Yes, you can aim to do your best, but don't kill yourself or sacrifice your mental
Yeah.
health in that.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
also I think, what I'm hearing and what you're saying, Dinuka, is this is not actually perfectionism as a form of self-sabotage, which I think for some people it can be. It can be like an opportunity to get in their own way. Whereas what you're talking about is actually really wanting to do the very best for readers. This is not even, I want to do the very best so that everyone's going to think that I'm whatever word. Is actually what I'm hearing you saying is, you want to put something out into the world that is the very best it can be for the readers, especially now you have them because they've been reading your books, and that's a lovely thing. That's a really beautiful thing, and it's that opportunity to, as you were talking about, this is your mind, to accept your own nature. Because I used to think about that in terms of, because I've been a perfectionist since childhood. Many years of being on a yoga mat has trained me not to be, but it was also partly just thinking, well, this is my nature, and I'm going to stop pathologizing my constant worrying because because I am a worry from the time my eyes open in the morning, and then I just thought that was me. And at a certain point, I was hearing people talking about anxiety and how people worry all the time. I thought, oh, is that what I have? Because I don't put that label on it. I'm just a worrywart. I'm just me.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think it is the caring for and trying to get things right, and that's sort of because you care about the work and you want to, you want to honor this huge opportunity, because again, I don't take it lightly, in the sense that in the middle of my life, I'm like, oh, I'll just be a writer now. Oh, okay then. Okay, I'll just do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't take lightly the opportunity that I've been given, to literally be able to look at my email and have a publisher's name that I can email. There's plenty of people who just would love to be in that kind of situation and are striving to be in that situation. So I don't take it lightly that, there are people who are on my side and want to help me, and I get the opportunity to do this. So I want to, you want to honor that, to try and do the best you can. At the same time, so as a counterpoint to that, how I try and tell myself, but I have to also, when I can feel myself going down those spirals, to come back to, but wasn't this meant to be fun? Isn't that why you started doing it in the first place? Because it wasn't to create another stress in your life. It was to escape the other stress in your life.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, you know what I mean? Wasn't that the reason? And so if you have now made this into a stress that you you know what I mean? That shouldn't be so to step back from it and go, okay, well, let's enjoy the writing and kind of let's go back into the story, and to try and just and to remember to do that, because you can get caught up in in deadlines and the publishing kind of cycle and all of the things, and expectations and and disappointments and all of the things, but to kind of remember, but you know what? I did the thing, I got published. And whatever happens after this, that's still an achievement. No one can take that away from me. I did that, that's there for my kids, and it will be there. And so whatever comes from now on, it's all a bonus, so to try and kind of look at it that way, and to, but still care about it, but
Yeah, no, I totally relate to what you say. I was teaching when I finally got published, and I was writing for many years before I became a teacher, or while I was training to be a teacher. But I remember my goal, my mission, was to get published. And I didn't even think really probably beyond one book, but I guess I did, because my goal was to get published and to earn a teacher's wage from my writing. And I'm one of the lucky ones that did manage to do that relatively quickly. And like you said, there is an element of luck. There was a few, yes, I put the effort in, and you've got to be there for the luck. But there were a certain thing sort of aligning at the right time for me, finally, after 15 years of trying. To make it possible. And so relatively quickly I did earn a teacher's wage. And it's so easy now to think, well, I haven't got a movie deal. I haven't got, I'm not published really in any big form overseas, and you know, I've never hit a New York Times list and blah 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 blah. It's so easy to, you know, focus on what you don't have, but I think the key to happiness and probably longevity in this business is to focus on what you do have and what you can control. And you know, anything else, like you said, is a bonus. So I kind of feel exactly like that too, and I constantly remind, like, it's not something you have to you know, always remember. You have to remind yourself these things, and remind yourself you don't have to be perfect, and that you've achieved what you actually wanted to achieve. So it's not that, like, because Sophie, I can imagine you thinking, well, I'm starting to get into Sophie's head a little bit, I reckon. I mean, you know, you don't want to just go, oh, like, I'm stopping there, I've done enough. You're allowed to. It doesn't mean that. It means that you can continue to strive for more and everything, and to do better and all that sort of stuff. But it is such, you know, as you said, we did this because we wanted to and we found it enjoyable. And so I think it's the keys to remembering that and taking it all back to that, because that helps you deal with things like procrastination and perfectionism. Because procrastination often is fear, right? Fear that you're not gonna, like, I know even sometimes, and the book I'm writing right now, I probably love more than any book I've ever written, but it's taken me the longest, probably because I'm scared of stuffing it up, right? Like, and so anyway, what do you think, Soph?
Well, I'm also, while you're both talking, I was thinking about the fact that partly what can add to the stress and actually increase the perfectionist tendency is the public part of publishing. Because when you're writing for yourself, and you had a few years where you were writing these manuscripts, in fact you had 2 before the film was published, so you were well set up in terms of your writing practice and the stories you were telling, but that was all something that was private in a lot of ways. Once it won a prize, it was still kind of private, and then once your writing becomes public, that's a different animal altogether. Some might say it's a different beast. And even when you keep doing it, and Rachel's been doing it for through over 20 books, I don't know that part of it actually is something we can inoculate ourselves against, and it then becomes this practice of trying to not let the fear gallop away with us almost, and then so it becomes this other entity. And it is the fear of being seen, it's the fear of being judged, it's the fear of any kind of feedback that's going to hurt, and I think that's what it comes down to is we can write because we can access our feelings in a way that we can put them into stories, but at the same time, that ability makes us more likely to be hurt by certain things that come to us that we can't control. And perfectionism is a form of control. Procrastination is a form of control, because it's like, well, I'm going to do everything or I'm going to do nothing.
Absolutely. And I think like that fear, I must say, you know, that winning the Banjo Prize and that unpublished manuscript award, that was actually quite you know, it was like sort of that sent me on an anxiety spiral, because it wasn't like, oh, a book was getting published, it was getting published with a prize, and therefore the expectation I felt like was, so now when people read it, they weren't just reading a book, they were like, oh, it's a prize winning book, so it better be freaking really good. Like, I've spent money on this, like did this deserve to win a prize? You know what I'm, so those were my internal negative thoughts, right? And so that made me feel like even more exposed, because not only was this my first book, like I'd never done anything like this before, and it, to me, it felt like the bravest thing I'd ever done to that point of like putting myself out there to, you know,
because it is like, brave.
Well, because again, because I didn't come from that writing background, I did not have any experience of ever, like, you know, obviously, like I obviously been submitting my work, but like I didn't have that experience of really sort of, I don't know, being out there in that way. And so it really felt exposing. And it's only really now that I kind of look back and go, I probably didn't enjoy that debut year as much as I should have, and really just kind of sucked all the marrow out of it and gone, you know, like, how cool is this?
The wonderful thing, hey?
Yes, because I was so kind of covered in fear, of like, oh God, will this be good enough? Like it's coming with it has won something and therefore it better bloody be good, and like nobody else is thinking that. They're just happy for you and like are supportive of you, and they're just like, oh, let's just read this book, and like, you know what I mean? They're not sort of like, they don't have a freaking 10-list questionnaire that they're judging you against, but like that's what it felt like to me, again, because I've never done it before. And so that felt incredibly exposing that fear, so like, but now I feel like I don't think I gave that book enough credit. Now I'm far more appreciative of that book than I ever was at the time, so yeah.
I think that the book would be happy with the appreciation now. It doesn't.
That's right, exactly. I've got there. Sorry, book.
And also, it's that book sets you up for the next two books as well.
Right, yes.
So if you, now that you have had some experience of feeling like this, is it a matter of recognizing when it's starting to happen, and are there things that you put in place to try to manage it and change the course? Because that's actually, I'm making that sound quite easy. Oh, just start thinking differently. It's not. And it doesn't mean that just because you've had quite a bit of experience with it that you can do that. But I'm just interested as to whether you can almost feel it happening in your body or in your mind, and you think, okay, I'm about to go down this path I don't want to go down.
Yeah, well, I guess for me now, what's changed is really I've found sort of my community, and now I'm able to kind of sort of seek feedback from writing friends, because as I said, because I didn't come from that writing background, I didn't have those setups. I found them after publication, but now I do have writing friends who I can kind of give a manuscript to at a fairly early stage and go, and get feedback and stuff like that, which I would have never felt comfortable doing, much like, initially, that would have felt like impossible to do, but now that I'm in that world and have close writing friends who are, and I have read their manuscripts in return, and I feel like, oh, okay, we're all kind of, in that first messy draft stage, and and it kind of normalizes it, and it's not as sort of it doesn't feel as like I can recognize it and go, it is just the stages of writing, right? Like this is the current stage I'm in. It is the stage of worrying. It's a stage where, like I've done all the research, and then I'm like, oh my God, have I done the research? Like, and I just absolutely panic and just like go back through every single, it's that thing of that last minute thing of, oh, you are actually going to release this into the world, and you can't pull it back. And then you second guess every single decision you've ever made regarding the book, but again, so I know that about my personality, and certainly my partner knows that of me. So he's well aware of when I'm getting into those spirals as well, and he's a really good support system, and I can kind of talk to him about
my family can see it now too.
Yes, absolutely. And it's really good actually, because like particularly with the kids as they're getting older, I can have really honest conversations with them about, hey, I am kind of going through this at the moment, it's just, like I'm not feeling very good about this at the moment. And then it's normalized for them as well when they're doing like a piece of work or an essay or whatever, it's normalized that it's, that's just how humans do things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like my oldest has just started high school, so it's not like he's doing super, massive things. Yeah. But we are having those kind of conversations of like, like where I'm like dreading, like, oh God, will my agent like this, or like all those kind of things. I can talk to them very honestly about those things, and they're like, no, it'll be fine, Mum. Like, and I think that's good, because it's sort of like they see adults sort of going through the exact same things that they're going through. It's not just automatically you're an adult and how the world works. You still go through things of self-doubt and learning and kind of gritting your teeth and just bloody doing it, getting through the deadline or whatever it is, like you are doing it and sort of showing them that it's, that's kind of what it takes or whatever,
So yes, showing up and sticking with it.
Yes.
So are you working on something at the moment?
Yes. So basically I'm in that stage of, literally, so I've finished the new project and I'm actually just in the process of getting feedback from various writer friends and a particular writer friend I'm waiting on her feedback, because she's a real, crime. She's a fellow crime writer, so I really need to make sure that the twist works. Anyway, but yeah, so that's done. So it's a standalone. So this is my brand new one, is a standalone, and it absolutely felt like starting at ground zero again, because this is so my previous 3 books were police procedurals and sort of more kind of standard, I guess, detective led, then the detective does this and then they go and interview that person. And, like there was a kind of a natural progression of, because it just needed to be investigated. Whereas this was more like a psychological suspense book about 2 sisters. And I had never really done that before. And I specifically kind of wanted to do something I hadn't done before. Like I kind of wanted to have a far more closed circle of characters. Whereas again, with police procedurals, you essentially have the entire town available to you with suspects and family members and the police family and her family, like there's a huge cast, right? I can always, I'm bored with this character, she can go off and interview someone else, whereas I purposely kept this character list, like a circle, much smaller circle of characters, and tried to kind of create those, like, to see if I could do it, like set a challenge for myself.
Challenging yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sophie, sorry, this is just me. I've sort of recently signed a crime.
Yes, with Mercedes, how exciting! Oh my god, it's so cool.
It's terrifying.
So cool.
But I noticed that you said like your previous day job, or whatever your day job was, definitely not in you weren't a police.
No.
Environmental consultant.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So how did you was it just because you've read so much crime, which I too have read a lot of crime, even though I haven't, written it before. How do you go about getting all the ins and outs and knowing all the clues and, I don't know, working out how the detectives solve things? Did you talk to detectives? Like, what was your research like to get in that mindset?
Okay, so I'm very lucky because there's all these police around me. So my husband, back in the day, he was a police officer. He wasn't a detective.
Divorce my husband and marry a cop. Got it.
Yep, that's it. Yeah. In saying that, he was he was ages ago. So now he's of no use at all, because he left the police force so long ago that he doesn't know any of the more recent stuff, because technology has changed and it's completely different now. So my kind of first readers on the police procedural side is actually a family friend, really good family friend, who is he used to be in the New South Wales Police Force, but then he retrained as a criminal barrister, so he has the law side as well. So so he's really good.
Great.
He's excellent. And then
well.
I know. That's right. All these people turns out all these contacts. And then I also have a neighbor who's a police officer. So he gets my late night texts when I am super close to a deadline, and I'm like, oh shit, what's the whatever term for whatever, and he'll answer those things.
Do you have any of them read your book before you submit it? Or?
So my family friend, the barrister friend, he is my kind of first reader on the procedural side, and so he'll read the whole manuscript. This new one I haven't given it to him, only because he's so freaking busy, and this is not a police thing, so I feel bad basically wasting his time, really. Making him read a whole book that has literally 3 pages of police stuff, what I mean? So I asked him questions for this. But the other 3 books, he was the first reader for all 3, just to make sure I hadn't completely screwed over the police. I have, and in saying that, Google does get you most of the way, you can get a lot of the way. So I am very happy when I get kind of 80%, because usually then when I do go to my procedural advisor, and I've got a forensics guy as well who works in Queensland Health, and I'll give him questions, but I'll link it to the research that I've done, and I'll go, this is what I've assumed, and this is how I've put the scene, and I'll give him that page, and I go, does this sound right to you? I couldn't find any reference to X. Do you, and so usually by the end, I will have to update maybe 1 or 2 scenes maybe. And so I'm pretty happy with that, because I'm pretty much there, and he'll go, actually, you just need to do this, that you wouldn't, whatever. So there's a whole thing in Tipping Point where about the stomach contents, and I was like, at this whole thing where Kate had made this freaking cake. I was like, a Sri Lankan cake. It was this whole thing, and he's like, nah, you wouldn't be able to tell that with the stomach contents. I'm like, come on.
Oh, no.
So I had to change that whole thing. I was like, come on, So anyway, it was fine.
I think the moral of the story here, Rachel, is that Dinuka needs to just to start a consultancy for crime writers.
Yeah.
You funnel all the questions to her. She will actually go and ask other people.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So,
now
crime writers in Australia, not free consultancy. Hard for it.
My email time of sending them the questions.
Yeah.
I think that this is valid. Now, Dinuka, another reason we wanted to talk to you today is that you are an ambassador for Chapters for Change. Now, and there is a readathon coming up.
Yes.
So it'd be great to hear about Chapters for Change and your role and the readathon.
Yes, absolutely. So Chapters for Change, so they, as you said, so they run a readathon every year, and they support sort of literacy projects in Cambodia. And it's such a great initiative, because particularly for readers and writers, because I mean, it's basically, we are reading in order to raise funds, to raise money for literacy projects in Cambodia. So people, I think the stats in Cambodia are sort of like 1 in 5 people over 15 don't have literacy kind of skills. And as we all know, I mean, literacy is such a huge part of kind of like, getting through life. It's not only even just like, not having access to books, but just basically being able to just function in everyday life, like sort of being able to read your like contracts and, read a menu and just feel like a human, you know what I mean? Like it just opens the doors for you in so many ways. And there's so many things that just being able to read, we take for granted, just being able to navigate life and navigate frigging, whatever we're signing and being able to get through life. And so I think it's such a great cause. And so each year, Human and Hope, they run this readathon through Readers for Change, Chapters for Change, I should say, sorry, their readathon. And so you can register. So the registration starts, I think, mid-May. And the readathon itself goes through all of July. And you can sign up for however many books you want to read, right? And so like it's the perfect way. I think it's actually the perfect guilt-free way of going, well, I am actually getting through my TBR pile
and I'm helping
a good cause, right? Like is the best. It's like there's no guilt in it. I'm like, I'm actually reading for a good cause. Do not disturb me. I am raising money here in bed, reading a book, like it's like perfect, right?
Yeah.
So the registration opens in mid-May. And it's great because during the period, like all the bookstagrammers get involved, and it's such a great way to kind of get through that massive pile of reading you've been always meant to do, but you're doing good by raising money for a really worthy cause, I think. So and as an ambassador, I mean, we've just basically I get to kind of just talk about it. And just support such a great cause, and Sal, who runs it, she's just amazing. So I'm very proud to be a supporter of it. Yeah.
And I think you pitched the readathon beautifully as the guilt-free way to get through your TBR.
Right.
Anyone, and also it's that thing where some people like a deadline, right? Like if you're thinking, I really have a lot of books I would like to read, but I have trouble setting aside the time because other responsibilities come in. It's like the deadline of the readathon really focus the mind.
Exactly. And it's like a whole month where you can go, well, like this is my thing for this month, and like nobody disturb me. You know what I mean? Like it's an actual thing. Because honestly, if you were doing a marathon or whatever, like nobody would have any issue with you going and training, and you know what I mean?
No,
it's like,
so true.
I'm reading. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm raising money. This is what I'm doing. I'm raising
love
money.
that. Oh, yes.
So, you know, I think it's like for readers, it's just perfect. And I think it's just a great way to get through your TBR.
Well, we will put the link in the show
Yes.
notes for Chapters of
Absolutely.
Change. And at the time we're speaking, we have to wrap up because Rachel has to go.
Yes,
So, Dinuka, while
yes.
I'd love to keep talking to you because
Yes.
I feel like there are many other subjects we could cover.
Same. Well, you guys can keep talking without me.
Well, no, I think, you know, I wouldn't want to do that, Rachel. It would feel wrong. Would feel incredibly wrong. So Dinuka, we will say farewell and
Yes.
maybe when the next book comes out.
Yeah, can't wait
Yes.
to read your two sisters story. My next book is also two sisters.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
pretty
Well, there
sure
you go.
completely different because different genre.
Well, there's our theme for our next chat.
Yes.
Isn't it
Sorry.
funny how
Two
things are in the
sisters.
zeitgeist at the same
Yes,
time?
absolutely. Oh, cool. Excellent. I can't wait. Thank you so much for having me and enjoy your Pilates.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Rach, I loved meeting Dinuka and talking to her, and I do have a feeling there were other things we could have discussed,
Oh,
but
yeah, she's lovely, isn't she?
yeah, but we've been talking for over an hour between us all, so
Yes,
probably-
and I've already got my hair up now, ready to go to Pilates. So
Rachel, it's going to Pilates. That's why we have
to
to
look after my back, which Sophie is very 100% behind.
your
'cause she's
lovely back, your
my
wonderful
darling back. My back
back.
and I are going to Pilates to have fun.
Love it, and I'm sure you'll have fun. So, listeners/viewers, thanks for being with us, and Rachel, thanks for being with me.
And right back at you. We'll see you next time.
See you soon.
Bye.